When I was watching Avengers Endgame in theaters for the first time back in 2019, which feels like forever ago, I seriously thought that Thanos was going to win yet again, and that his previously stated plan of creating a new universe from the ashes of the previous one would be how the MCU would continue its story into Phase 4. I thought the movie was going to end with Thanos winning, and the MCU would completely reboot. A complete wipe of everything that came before. A definitive end. Instead, what we got was rushed visual effects, lazy writing, and a fanbase getting fatigued and frustrated with a slowly dying franchise. Phase 4 was by far the lowest point of the MCU. That's immensely obvious. Financially, no, of course not. That goes to Phase 1 since nothing really came before it, and it was basically just trying to build hype as it went along. But bad writing, rushed visual effects, and inconsistency, oh yeah, I'd absolutely take the lowest points of all of those boxes. And sure, there were some movies and shows that stood out amongst the crowd, but even those were more divisive than many previous installments. Also, why the hell did they not include the Fantastic Four in Phase 4? I mean, I get the obvious fact that it takes a long-ass time to make a movie and the MCU is a fast-chugging steamboat and all that, but come on, that's just a missed opportunity right there. Well, it's actually because of legal issues and blah blah blah, but yeah. And the same goes for it being released in 2024. Nope, that was also delayed to 2025, which in reality is actually a good thing. The MCU really should have just taken a 5-year break after Endgame so everything after could have some more time to be fully fleshed out with a little extra care put into the continuation of the MCU's narrative. COVID-19 happening especially should have been a sign for them to really just slow their fucking roll and put some extra thought into where it's gonna go from there. There was a 5-year time skip at the beginning of Endgame, so it even matches what's canon. Doing that would set real-world time back in line with the MCU's current time instead of making everything so convoluted and confusing whenever anyone tries to think about what year things are taking place in the MCU now. It works out perfectly, and it also allows audiences to take a break from staying up to date on all the new releases that they really have no reason to give a shit about since the overall quality isn't matching up with what came before it due to everything being so rushed. It's very publicly known that people working on MCU projects have been getting way overworked for years now, especially visual effects artists. The sheer amount of scummery that has been going on behind the scenes throughout the MCU's production is enormous. MCU movie directors mostly just serve under a title nowadays. The real director is Kevin Feige and whatever lovers he has pitching him ideas on the side. It's kind of like how the president of Russia and China are technically presidents, but in reality are just glorified dictators. That's just the first kind of related thought that popped into my head while I was writing the script for this video. Anyways, this video has gotten way too derailed. Let's get back on track. So, why do I think Thanos should have won twice from a storytelling perspective? Well, besides the obvious fact that most likely anything else the MCU could have tried would have worked out better for them than how Phase 4 did, what the MCU really needed after Phase 3 was a refresher. A big ol' change, something to definitively set it apart from what came before. And by the way, contrary to how most people view it, I do very much enjoy plenty of how they tried to continue the story after Endgame. Phase 4 projects continuously making references about the immense impact of the blip as everyone started referring to it was a great choice and simply just a natural progression of events. If half of all life got snapped away for 5 years and brought back, people would bring it up constantly. And actually, that's kind of a part of the problem. It wasn't brought up nearly enough. And there's actually a few possible reasons for that. Mainly that audiences would get kind of fed up with the past being brought up over and over again. Everyone that is watching any MCU movies or shows saw Endgame. That's a pretty well established fact. Now obviously there's at least one weird as hell person in the world that doesn't fit the description of what I just said, but it's a pretty universal generalization I think we can agree on besides the extremely rare weirdo out there. From a purely storytelling perspective where you aren't factoring the audience into the equation, bringing up the same thing over and over in almost every project is stupid. Its only function past a certain point would be as a reminder, which even then is a bit much and is also once again factoring in the audience, so my point is that it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it makes sense in-universe for it to be brought up over and over again, but on the other hand, narratively, it's pointless. And yet another reason why it gradually stopped being brought up over and over again, even though realistically it still would have been by just about everybody who isn't a superhero, is that they probably realized that audiences would start finding it redundant and annoying past a certain point. And also that past a point, they would stop thinking about it as much. In almost every single circumstance of storytelling, if you have a major double-edged sword in your story, you should probably change something. And that is very much the case with the MCU's Phase 4, even when you ignore this point. The MCU has continuously been trying to find ways to innovate and change things up enough to make it feel less like what came before Phase 4. And obviously, it has been failing majorly bad. Thanos winning again would completely solve that problem and actually actually turn it into a great strength. The MCU would become instantly compelling simply out of the fact that it ditched the source material in a major way. In the comics, Thanos almost universally wins the first time around, and then gets bested by the heroes when they inevitably, pun intended, try again. How better to establish Thanos as a truly unbeatable force than for him to win twice, once when the Avengers are already torn apart and crippled because of the events of Civil War, and again when all of them, except Black Widow, go up against Thanos and gives him absolutely every single thing they've got, and he still ends up winning in the end. Also, on a side note, Doctor Strange and the Hulk should have been more involved in the final climactic battle of Endgame. Doctor Strange was literally just tossed out of the fight at the very beginning because the writers thought he was too powerful, and the Hulk was because, well, the Russo brothers just fucking hate him. And if you don't already know and think it's just my own headcanon, they've actually openly admitted it. Go look it up. It's why they made him into a little bitch boy for everyone to bully at the beginning of Infinity War. Anyways, the Hulk is shown earlier on in Endgame to have basically lost all of his rage and ability to Hulk out. And even when he learns about Black Widow dying, he just gets a little peeved and throws a bench past the lake and calls it a day. An alternative writing decision that was even an inspiration for me to make this video in the first place for how the Hulk reacts to Black Widow dying so the Avengers can acquire the Soul Stone is in the last quarter of this video by the closer look that you should check out in the description below because it's simply just a great video. In that video, instead of Black Widow dying on Vormir to acquire the Soul Stone, she's instead replaced. We'll just settle on it being Hawkeye for the sake of simplicity. And instead of being killed on Vormir, she's killed in the final battle instead. And when the Hulk sees it happen, he goes batshit. More than he's ever been shown before, he gets so extremely pissed off and finally becomes a force to be reckoned with. Something that has been sorely missing from his character in the MCU for way too long, and only briefly being shown when he's brainwashed and turns against the Avengers in the slight mess of a movie, Age of Ultron. But even still, it's just not enough. Even the most powerful and raged out Hulk ever seen in the MCU is not enough against Thanos. He definitely puts up quite a fight, but it's just not enough. That last part I added on. So, Thanos wins at the end of Endgame and gets everything he wanted. A new universe where he appears as King Thanos, which is just yet another way to reference the comics in a super cool way. And Phase 4 starts with absolutely no familiarity and with a completely new set of heroes, because heroes are like a requirement for universes to exist or something. But they don't ever mess with Thanos because they don't actually see him as a bad guy. They see him as their one and only god, the creator of their universe. And way later on in, say, Phase 5, that universe's inhabitants end up finding out what Thanos did because he mistakenly didn't cover something up, and it's revealed to them that Thanos didn't in fact destroy the previous universe because he actually can't, because it's one of the Infinity Stone's limitations, and it can actually be restored by using them. And that is how you bring the concept of the multiverse to the MCU. Thanos did in fact create an entirely new universe, and he did so by destroying the previous one and having a new one take its place, but it's more so in a state of limbo, waiting for someone to realize what happened and to restore it. And so all throughout Phase 4 and 5, we follow our new heroes through their universe while Thanos is left mostly absent but still technically there out in his own little area, enjoying his retirement. You have heroes like the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Blade, Daredevil, the Sentry, and even some alternate versions of some of the previous set of Avengers. An example of which is Spider-Man, but instead in the form of Miles Morales. And all of them facing up against the likes of Venom, Carnage, Galactus, Kingpin, the Prowler, Doctor Doom, Magneto, and even potentially MODOK and Kang the Conqueror, if you can do their respective stories right this time. And Superior Iron Man, played by Tom Cruise. And in Phase 6, after the new heroes find out what Thanos did and the existence of the previous universe, they band together to fight against him and steal the Infinity Stones he's had stashed away all this time to undo his immense feat. Through a shared connection between their respective universes, the new heroes and the old come together for one last fight against Thanos, where they only win through sheer numbers and their newly discovered combined strengths for an unprecedented finale spanning across 6 entire phases. Where the MCU goes from there, I honestly have no goddamn idea. Maybe it stops to make way for other movies in theaters? Nah, money is way better than humility. And that's the end of this video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of my alternate MCU concept, and if you agree or disagree, or if you can think of an even better concept. Have yourself a very Merry Christmas, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to show me your appreciation by liking, subscribing, and sharing the video with your friends. And as always, have a great rest of your day.
Let him have his fun.